Chapter 320. The Pedophile and His Child Brides, Part 1. After the Jeddah Sharia court ruled on his favor, the old Saudi man took his pregnant child bride, Ifat Khan, emigrated to the Islamic Republic of Iran and settled there. As he did in Asmara, he bought a house in Tehran and kept his child bride imprisoned within its four walls. He hired 3 Iranian maidservants and 1 security guard. The security guard was an Afghani man, licensed to carry a gun. He was a retired Taliban terrorist in his late 60s but still a very tough and dangerous man. He had no qualms about shooting anyone who might break in and try to free the imprisoned child bride. He slept a few hours during the day and remained awake throughout the night. The 3 Iranian women served Ifat Khan around the clock. They had a huge room, which they used as dormitory to sleep in, and if any of them wanted to visit family, they got only 1 day off each week. Ifat was not allowed to do any work. Her only duty was to use the washroom and take a bath. She was not permitted to step out of the house's boundary under any circumstances. If she fell sick, one of the maidservants would call a nurse to treat her. If her illness was serious, an Iranian doctor would be called in to diagnose her and treat her for her specific illness. When Ifat delivered her first baby, she was a few months past 12 years old. The old man called in an Iranian midwife for the delivery. The midwife found it difficult to guide Ifat through a normal delivery. She was afraid that the small girl might die. She also expected that Ifat might need a cesarean and strongly advised the old man to send his wife to the hospital. He refused, saying that he would never allow any man to see the nakedness of his wife. Ifat was almost dead before the midwife managed to ease the baby out of her. Unfortunately, the baby died shortly after it was born. After that, the old man made Ifat use birth control pills to prevent his child bride from getting pregnant again. He was afraid that if she conceived again she might have died. His main concern was to enjoy her beautiful body that had warmed his heart so deeply. Sheikh Ahmed had, by this time, totally neglected his other 3 Saudi wives and spent most of his time in Tehran with his child bride. He began to do most of his business in Iran. He traveled once in every 2 or 3 months to Saudi Arabia and spent a few weeks over there. Sometimes, he traveled to other Asian and Arab countries and did his business over there too. His business flourished in Iran and he became quite wealthy. He spent a lot of money on his child bride. He bought her hundreds of dresses and adorned her with exquisite and expensive jewels that he bought on his many travels. He went out of his way to build a swimming pool for her inside his huge mansion, and then he hired a young Iranian woman to teach Ifat to swim. Once his child bride had learned how to swim, the old man began to sit by the pool on an armchair and watch her swimming in her bikini. He also purchased very costly jewelry for her. He modified his former practice with her and began to allow her to watch Indian movies. When they were in Asmara and when she was under 9 years old, he used to make her to watch porn movies with him and then force her to do to him what she saw in the movies. He still continued this practice with her in Tehran, but began to allow her to watch her Indian movies too. He bought a home theater system for her. Whatever she asked for, he bought for her. Whatever kind of food she wanted to eat, he provided. The only thing he refused to allow her to do was to go out of the house. Although he treated her like a queen, Ifat did not love the old man. She always felt great relief whenever he went away for a few weeks. She hated sex with him. Sex for her always meant pain and torture. He had made her to hate sex. She hated the nights because it always reminded her of her first year with him in Asmara, when he first started to rape her. For 8 years onwards, the old man continually and repeatedly raped Ifat. She, bound by her circumstances, simply resigned herself to the fact that she was going to be under his control forever. He made her believe that her mother had died. He repeatedly told her that her mother was arrested and sentenced to death by the Sharia court because she committed heinous crimes. Ifat never tried to run away from the old man. There was nowhere to go, she had no money and also no idea how to buy a ticket to fly back to India, where she knew that she had brothers and a grandmother in Bombay. In any case, her passport was locked inside a secured safe and the keys were always with the old man. So if it accepted her kismet in life and whatever little entertainment she got in the house of the old man was enough for her. She loved to watch Indian movies because she understood Hindi. She spoke 3 languages, Urdu, Hindi, and Persian. She had learned Persian from her maidservants who were living with her in the house. But she could read nor write any of these languages. The old man did not provide her with tutors to teach her reading and writing. Education for females was just not in his agenda. He decided to keep her illiterate like his other Arab women. Ifat Khan spent 7 years in Tehran imprisoned in the house of the old Saudi man. Her daily life varied little except when he traveled away. Whenever he went on his business trips or visited his other wives in Saudi Arabia, she would be completely free from his unpleasant presence. Whenever he was home, he would ask her to massage his body. Sex with him was the worst thing for her. During those 7 years, the old man had never spent more than 4 weeks away from her. His last trip was prolonged beyond his usual schedule, until the maidservants began to complain to her about their monthly payments. The old man went for a business trip to Pakistan and did not come back for many weeks. Ifat had no money nor did she know where the old man kept his money. Whenever the old man returned from his trips abroad, it was he who used to pay the maidservants and the security guard their wages. So she told the Iranian women that she had no money to give them. The women asked her to contact his wives in Saudi Arabia to find out whether he was still alive or if he was dead and to ask what was delaying his return. Ifat told them that she had no phone numbers to any of his wives. After 3 months had passed, the maidservants began to quarrel with Ifat. They had concluded that the old man was dead and buried by the Pakistanis. They asked Ifat to sell some of her gold and use the money to pay them for the 3 months that were due. They said that they wanted to go and seek other employment. Ifat feared that the angered Iranian women might gang against her and kill her, steal all her jewelry and run away. To avoid that situation, she agreed to sell some of her gold and pay them. The maidservants tried to convince the security guard to allow Ifat to go to the market to sell some of her gold. The security guard refused to listen to them. He said that he would shoot any one of them if they tried to help Ifat go out of the house or run away. He was the only one, at this point, who remained loyal to his master. After giving it some thought, Ifat settled the problem with the maidservants by giving each one of them some of her expensive clothes and a small piece from her costly ornaments. The Iranian women took what she gave them and quit their jobs. After her maidservants deserted her, Ifat was forced to do everything by herself. She was not used to any kind of manual labor. Out of necessity, she began washing her own clothes and cooking her own meals. She struggled with her chores and worried about her dwindling store of food. She had no money and knew that the stalwart security guard took his job seriously. He would never allow her to go out of the house, even if she had to starve to death. She was also under the impression that the old man had died. She tried many times to convince the security guard to allow her to go to the market to sell some of her gold and buy groceries and other things, but he always refused. Finally, after 4 months passed, a letter was sent to her. It was written in Arabic. When that mysterious letter arrived, she succeeded in convincing the security guard to allow her to find someone to read it and tell her what was written in it. The security man told her that he would go to the market, find an Arabic translator and bring him to her. He locked her up in her bedroom, went to the market and brought back a translator. Through the translator, Ifat came to know that the letter was written and sent to her by the old man himself. He stated that he was held up in a jail in India. He claimed that he was falsely accused of kidnapping and raping of an Indian young girl and thrown inside a filthy prison at Bombay. In his letter, the old Saudi man ordered Ifat to come to India and appoint a lawyer for him. He wanted her to sell some of her jewelry, purchase a ticket and come to Bombay as soon as possible. He strictly mentioned that she shouldn't come alone. His Afghani security guard who had faithfully served him for 7 years should come with her, and she was to buy a ticket for the security guard too. The Arabic translator read the letter in front of the Afghani security guard, and after hearing the contents of the letter, the guard finally allowed Ifat to come out of her dungeon. He accompanied her to the market, concealing his rifle in his robe. He forewarned her before he allowed her to step out of the house that if she tried to run away at any time, he would not hesitate to shoot and kill her in front of the people. In his letter, the old man also informed Ifat how and where she could find the key to the safe holding her Indian passport. The Afghani security guard had a valid Iranian passport. After selling some jewelry and obtaining enough money, the security guard took Ifat to the Indian consulate and applied for his visa. His visa was issued after a week. After that, he took her with him to the Iranian airlines and made her purchase their tickets, booking their flight to Bombay. Although she was a little over 18, Ifat was like a child who needed someone to tell her what to do and how to do it. She had no experience of the outside world. For 10 years, she had been imprisoned like a bird inside a golden cage and denied access to any form of social interaction. The Afghani terrorist led her from place to place and made her do what he wanted her to do. He scared her with the gun, which he always kept hidden inside his clothes. It took a month before Ifat and the Afghani man flew from Tehran to Bombay. People who saw the Afghani with Ifat naturally assumed him to be her grandfather. Afghani women look like Indian women, and Indians believe that Afghanistan was part of the subcontinent of India before the Arabs invaded it, and brought their religion and forced it on the country. There was strong evidence, which proved that the Hindu Rig Veda was created in Afghanistan. Rig Veda is one of the 4 religious books of Hinduism known as the Sacred Vedas. The Taliban terrorist knew that he could not pass his gun through the checkpoint at the Tehran International Airport, so he left it behind. However, he managed to convince Ifat that he had somehow managed to smuggle it inside with him. Ifat followed him inside the airport with the docility of a prisoner following his guard. She would not even contemplate using the washroom without his express permission. When she told him she wanted to go to the lavatory, he allowed her to go, but he went with her, waiting outside the lavatory. Some of the flying crew and passengers noticed the behavior of the Afghani man and the young girl with him, but they thought that as a fanatic Muslim man he was simply protecting his granddaughter from being teased or harassed. Who would have guessed the truth? So they let be, the dangerous Afghani terrorist and his young Indian captive, the product of 10 years of captivity, rape and abduction. Upon arrival at the Bombay Chhatrapati Shivaji International Airport, anti-terrorist police routinely went through every passenger manifest and found that one of the Iranian airplane was carrying one Bismillah Ali Altalbi, a Taliban terrorist. The police did not identify him through his fake Iranian nationality and name. His passport carried the name Mustafa Ahmed Shakir, but through his passport photo which matched a computer photo list and his name was tagged. The Indian police took him to a room and fingerprinted him. Computers matched his prints to Bismillah Ali Altalbi. He was arrested immediately and transferred to a maximum security jail at Mumbai. The police did not know that Ifat Khan had come with him. She was, after all, Indian with a valid passport, and there was nothing to indicate that she was related to him in any way. Ifat did not know that her captor was arrested until she asked some of the Indian passengers who came with her in the same plane. She was told that her grandfather was placed under arrest by Bombay police. The passengers were surprised when they saw Ifat simply turned her back and walked away. She did not want to be arrested with that dangerous man who filled her heart with dread for so many years. When Ifat came out of the airport, she did not know what to do and where to go. Although she was free from her captor, she was still controlled by fear of the old man. She was scared that if she did not go to him at the jail and do what he told her to do, he might send some men to search for her and kill her. For 10 years, he had frightened her and made her to feel as if he was a ferocious beast and she was helpless prey in his hands. He had made her to believe from the age of 7 that if she tried to run away from him he would send some of his men to find her and slaughter her. So, heeding her instincts, she took a taxi and asked the driver to take her to Arthur Road Jail. While the taxi was driving through the busy city, Ifat was shocked to see the huge crowds of people. Her memory of Bombay had grown dim over the years and she could only remember little glimpses of her slum. She remembered that she used to sleep on the ground with her 5 brothers. Her memory also recollected the poor food she used to eat. She compared her poor and miserable life when she was a child and the rich and comfortable life she lived in with the old man. Reflecting back, she wished that she could have continued that miserable life in Bombay. Asmara and Tehran, with all the trappings of wealth, held no attraction for her because of the tyranny of the old man. It was 12:50 p.m. when the taxi dropped Ifat off at the Arthur Road Jail. When asked to fill a visiting form, she told the police authorities that she did not know how to read and write. One of the police officers asked her to give him some money if she wanted him to help her to fill in the form, and Ifat gave him a $100 note. The guard felt as if she gave him a treasure. His monthly salary was 3,000 rupees, what Ifat had given him was the equivalent of 6,800 rupees, and if he exchanged it on the black market he might get 7,000 rupees. It was more than he made in a month. He asked her to come into his office and sit on a chair, and he ordered her a cold drink. After she had finished her drink, the officer asked her the questions in the form and filled it in for her. He conversed with her in Hindi. Then he personally took the rich Indian girl to the place where she could meet the detainee.